The hospital hallway had gone silent long before midnight. The brightest doctors in the country stood outside a private room with exhausted eyes and defeated hearts. Machines continued to beep inside, but hope had already begun slipping away. A billionaire who could buy almost anything in the world was about to lose the only thing money could never replace, his little son. Every expert had failed. Every treatment had been tried. Every miracle seemed impossible. Then, on a cold rainy night, a homeless boy stepped through the hospital doors carrying nothing but a worn backpack, a kind heart, and a secret that no one believed could change anything. Within hours, the impossible began to happen. Before we continue, if you believe kindness is stronger than wealth, that every person deserves a second chance, and that even the smallest act of compassion can change a life forever, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss more inspiring stories like this one. Everyone in the city knew the name Jonathan Carter. He was one of the richest businessmen in the country, a man whose skyscrapers reached the clouds and whose companies employed thousands of people. Newspapers admired his success, magazines praised his intelligence, and television channels called him a financial genius. Yet behind the walls of his enormous mansion, Jonathan was simply a father whose entire world revolved around his 8-year-old son, Ethan. Since the day Ethan was born, Jonathan believed his life finally had meaning beyond numbers and profits. He canceled meetings to attend school plays, learned bedtime stories despite never having enjoyed reading, and spent weekends building toy castles that always collapsed before they were finished. Wealth had given him comfort, but his son had given him joy. Everything changed on an ordinary afternoon when Ethan suddenly collapsed during a school science presentation. At first everyone believed it was simple exhaustion, but tests revealed something much darker. Ethan had developed a rare neurological condition that attacked his nervous system with terrifying speed. Specialists from around the world flew in with hope and confidence, but one after another they left the hospital carrying the same heartbreaking expression. Experimental treatments failed. Advanced surgeries brought no improvement. Every passing day weakened the cheerful little boy who had once filled every room with laughter. Jonathan spent millions searching for answers. He chartered private jets for internationally recognized doctors. He funded emergency research programs. He offered unlimited rewards to anyone who could provide a treatment. But despite all the money flowing through the hospital, Ethan's condition continued to worsen. The billionaire who had built an empire from nothing now sat helpless beside a hospital bed, holding a tiny hand that grew colder every day. His expensive suits became wrinkled from sleepless nights. His confident voice disappeared beneath overwhelming grief. Every morning he asked the doctors the same desperate question, and every evening he received the same painful silence. Outside the hospital, life moved on. Cars rushed through busy streets while people hurried toward work without noticing the small figure sitting beneath an old bridge only a few blocks away. 14-year-old Noah had called that bridge home for nearly 3 years. He owned little more than a threadbare blanket, a backpack filled with worn books rescued from trash bins, and an old harmonica that had belonged to his mother. After losing both parents in separate tragedies, Noah survived by collecting recyclable bottles, cleaning car windows at intersections, and helping elderly shopkeepers carry supplies in exchange for leftover food. Many people walked past him without making eye contact. Others assumed he was dangerous simply because he looked poor. Yet despite carrying more pain than most adults could imagine, Noah never allowed bitterness to replace kindness. Every evening before sleeping, Noah visited a nearby community shelter where an elderly volunteer named Grace offered warm soup and encouraged homeless children to believe their lives still mattered. Grace had once worked as a hospital nurse before retiring. She taught Noah basic first aid, explained how to comfort frightened people, and often reminded him that healing sometimes began long before medicine entered the picture. Noah listened carefully to every lesson because they made him feel connected to the mother he barely remembered. Grace often said that the greatest medicine a person could receive was genuine human compassion when hope seemed lost. One rainy evening Grace failed to appear at the shelter. Concerned, Noah learned she had suffered a minor stroke and had been admitted to the same hospital where Ethan was fighting for his life. Carrying the only flowers he could afford, tiny wildflowers gathered from an empty field, Noah walked through the hospital entrance. Security guards glanced suspiciously at his soaked clothes but allowed him inside after hearing whom he wished to visit. The hospital felt like another world. Shiny floors reflected bright lights. Expensive perfumes mixed with the scent of disinfectant. Families whispered prayers while doctors hurried from room to room. After spending time with Grace, Noah wandered through the pediatric wing looking for a vending machine that might accept the few coins he had saved. As he passed Ethan's room, he noticed something that everyone else seemed too exhausted to see. The little boy's favorite stuffed bear had slipped onto the floor just beyond the reach of anyone focused on medical equipment. Without thinking, Noah quietly picked up the bear, gently brushed away the dust, and placed it back beside Ethan. For a brief second, the unconscious child tightened his fingers around the toy. It was such a tiny movement that no machine reacted, but Noah noticed it immediately. He smiled, believing the boy had somehow felt the familiar comfort. Jonathan looked up from his chair with tired eyes. At first he seemed annoyed by the unexpected visitor. Then he noticed the careful way Noah handled the toy and the genuine sadness in the teenager's face. Noah simply wished the child would recover because no child deserved such suffering. He expected nothing in return. The next day Noah returned after visiting Grace. He brought a small paper crane folded from recycled newspaper and placed it near Ethan's bed. Grace had once told him that folded cranes symbolized hope during difficult times. Nurses smiled politely but assumed it meant little. Yet when Ethan's heart rate unexpectedly stabilized for several minutes, one nurse quietly mentioned that it happened shortly after Noah's visit. No one believed there was any connection. It was simply a coincidence. Still, Noah kept coming. Each visit was simple. He read children's adventure stories aloud, even though Ethan remained unconscious. He spoke about sunsets he had watched from the bridge, birds building nests beneath abandoned buildings, and dreams of becoming someone who helped forgotten people. He described hope as if it were something alive. The room that had become filled with fear slowly began feeling different. Nurses found themselves lingering longer. Even Jonathan started listening from the corner, surprised by the warmth carried in the homeless boy's gentle words. Medical science explained that familiar voices and emotional stimulation can sometimes benefit unconscious patients, though outcomes vary greatly. The doctors never promised miracles, but they admitted that maintaining a calm, hopeful environment could support recovery alongside treatment. Noah knew nothing about research papers or clinical studies. He only knew that lonely people needed someone to remind them they were not alone. One afternoon Ethan opened his eyes for the first time in weeks. The entire hospital rushed into action. Doctors checked monitors, adjusted medications, and repeated neurological examinations. They remained cautious because brief improvements sometimes disappeared as quickly as they arrived. But Ethan continued responding. His breathing strengthened. He squeezed Jonathan's hand. Tears rolled down the billionaire's face as hope returned after weeks of despair. Jonathan could not stop wondering about the homeless boy who had refused every offer of money for transportation or food. When he finally asked Noah why he kept visiting a stranger, the answer stayed with him forever. Noah explained that when his own mother died, many people offered sympathy, but almost no one stayed long enough to make him feel seen. He believed no child should ever fight fear alone, whether rich or poor. If his presence eased even one lonely moment, then every visit was worth it. Those words shattered something inside Jonathan. For years he had measured success by profits, acquisitions, and investments. Sitting beside a homeless teenager who possessed almost nothing, he realized true wealth could never be stored in bank accounts. It lived inside compassionate hearts willing to give without expecting anything back. As Ethan slowly regained strength over the following weeks through ongoing medical care, rehabilitation, and dedicated treatment, the story spread throughout the hospital. Nurses spoke about the teenager who reminded everyone that healing involved more than machines. Doctors acknowledged that while medicine had saved Ethan's life, emotional support had transformed the atmosphere surrounding his recovery. Jonathan never claimed Noah had performed magic. Instead, he insisted that Noah had restored hope at the exact moment everyone else had nearly surrendered to despair. Determined to honor that lesson, Jonathan searched for Noah after Grace informed him the teenager planned to leave the city because winter was approaching. He eventually found him beneath the familiar bridge, packing his few belongings into the worn backpack. Jonathan offered Noah a home, an education, and every opportunity he had been denied. Noah hesitated, afraid that accepting help would somehow erase the independence he had fought so hard to preserve. Jonathan gently assured him that accepting kindness did not make anyone weak. Sometimes allowing others to help was the bravest decision a person could make. Months turned into years. Noah entered school for the first time since childhood. Though he struggled at first, he worked tirelessly, inspired by Grace's lessons and Ethan's friendship. Jonathan established a foundation dedicated to homeless youth, funding shelters, education programs, counseling services, and medical outreach across the city. Every new building carried a simple message engraved near the entrance: "No act of kindness is ever too small." Ethan fully recovered enough to enjoy life again. The illness remained an unforgettable chapter, but it no longer defined him. He often visited the shelters created through his father's foundation, playing games with children who reminded him of Noah. Instead of arriving in luxury cars to impress others, Jonathan often volunteered quietly beside his son and the boy who had once slept under a bridge. Grace lived long enough to witness the extraordinary family that had formed from unimaginable hardship. She smiled every time she saw Noah teaching younger children how to fold paper cranes. The same symbol of hope that once sat beside a hospital bed now filled classrooms, shelters, and community centers. Thousands of colorful cranes decorated walls where frightened children learned to dream again. The greatest miracle had never been a mysterious cure or an impossible medical breakthrough. The greatest miracle was that compassion traveled from one wounded heart to another until every life it touched began changing for the better. A billionaire discovered humility. A homeless boy found a family. A sick child found hope. An entire city learned that the value of a person could never be measured by the clothes they wore or the money they possessed. If this story has touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in the power of kindness, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories, and leave a comment telling us what part of this journey moved you the most. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need hope today. Special request. Comment below with the words, "Kindness changes everything," if you believe one compassionate act can transform a person's entire life. Years later, visitors entering one of the city's largest children's hospitals often paused before a simple photograph hanging quietly in the main hallway. It showed three smiling faces standing side by side: a successful businessman, a healthy young man who had once been a fragile child, and another young man holding a folded paper crane in his hand. Beneath the picture appeared a short sentence that every visitor remembered long after leaving the building. It read, "Hope sometimes arrives wearing torn clothes." Those few words reminded everyone that heroes rarely look the way we expect. Sometimes they are ordinary people carrying invisible scars, offering extraordinary kindness when the world has almost forgotten how. And somewhere, perhaps closer than we realize, another quiet act of compassion is waiting to become someone else's miracle.